Welcome back to another explainer. Let's just jump right in today, because we're looking at a completely unlikely hero in modern medicine. It's a drug that was discovered decades ago, honestly kind of forgotten about, and is now being pulled right back to the front lines of one of the absolute biggest health crises we face today. It's called Nitrofurantoin, and it is the ultimate medical comeback kid. But as we're going to see, this comeback, it comes with a pretty significant catch. To really understand why this drug is making headlines again, we've got to look at the stakes here. 150 million. That is the number of UTIs that occur globally every single year. I mean, that is a staggering figure. What was once a routine, easily treatable infection is rapidly mutating into a massive, drug-resistant superbug crisis. Our standard medical weapons are literally failing, and the medical community has been absolutely scrambling for a solution.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to cover 1. The UTI's superbug crisis. 2. The 1950s comeback kid. 3. A multi-targeted bacterial attack. 4. The risks of long-term use. And 5. Future antibiotic boosters.
All right, Section 1. The UTI superbug crisis and the failure of conventional antibiotics. Let's see why our highly advanced drugs are suddenly letting us down. The root of the problem is right here. Uropathogenic E. coli, or UPEC, is responsible for a whopping 80% of uncomplicated UTIs. That is a massive chunk of the pie. For years, doctors confidently relied on a class of antibiotics called fluoroquinolones to wipe this bacteria out. But because we prescribed them so heavily for so long, this E. coli just evolved. It became a highly resistant superbug. The conventional drugs are basically bouncing right off them now, leading to these incredibly complex, hard-to-treat infections. We desperately needed a new weapon. Or actually, scratch that, we needed an old one.
Let's move right into Section 2, the 1950s comeback kid, moving from the past to our first-line defense.
Tracing this chronological journey is fascinating. Nitrofurantoin was actually discovered way back in 1953. For decades, it kind of just sat on the bench while newer, shinier antibiotics hit the market. But as resistance to those newer drugs skyrocketed, the medical community started looking backward. In 2010, the Infectious Diseases Society of America officially repositioned this 1953 drug as a first-line therapy for uncomplicated lower UTIs. But wait, look at 2012. Just 2 years later, it triggered a major warning on the Beers criteria for older adults. We'll get into that huge complication in a second, but first, why is it so effective in the first place?
What's really cool is how the physical properties of this molecule make it the ultimate biological sniper. When a patient takes this drug, it has a half-life of just 20 minutes in the blood. 20 minutes! That is incredibly fast. 90% of it is rapidly excreted straight through the kidneys and right into the urine. And why does that matter? Well, because it means the drug doesn't hang around in the bloodstream or the gut, nuking your healthy normal bacteria. It concentrates entirely in the urinary tract. It acts like a highly targeted sniper, taking out the exact source of the UTI, while leaving the entire rest of your body's flora completely unharmed.
So it gets to the right place quickly. But what does it actually do once it gets there? Let's hit Section 3, a multi-targeted bacterial attack, or the multi-tool mechanism.
You know, most antibiotics have a single mechanism of action. They're kind of a one-trick pony targeting one specific part of a bacteria. But nitrofurantoin, it is a biological multi-tool. It attacks the bacteria on 4 distinct fronts, all at the same time. It disrupts the Krebs cycle, which is the bacteria's energy factory. It halts protein synthesis, it damages the cell wall, and it attacks the bacteria's DNA. So the crucial takeaway here is this. For a bacteria to develop resistance to this drug, it would essentially have to mutate all 4 of those vital life functions at the exact same time. That is nearly impossible for bacteria to pull off, which perfectly explains why, even after 70 years of use, resistance rates of this drug are still incredibly low.
And the way it does this is wildly clever. The drug sets a precise molecular trap where the bacteria literally trigger their own demise. An enzyme inside the bacteria, called cytochrome P450 reductase, mistakenly activates the nitro group on the nitrofurantoin molecule. This reaction rapidly generates highly toxic reactive oxygen species, or ROS, directly inside the bacterial cell. It's literally like the bacteria is unknowingly pulling the pin on a molecular grenade. The resulting oxidative stress completely shreds the bug from the inside out.
It is a brilliant mechanism, absolutely brilliant. But we've got to pivot to Section 4, the risks of long-term use, because here is the catch in the comeback.
The key to understanding this drug's danger is entirely about how it's used. Notice the sheer contrast here. Taking nitrofurantoin for 5 days for a standard acute UTI, highly effective and generally very safe. But compare that with long-term prophylaxis. Because UTIs come back a lot, doctors sometimes prescribe a daily low dose of this drug for months or even years just to prevent future infections. And this prolonged chronic exposure is exactly where the potentially lethal dangers begin to emerge.
If we break down the severe complications associated with that chronic use, we see three major red flags. First, hepatotoxicity, severe liver damage. Second, pulmonary syndrome, which can hit you with sudden fever, chills, and serious lung damage. And third, peripheral neuropathy, which is nerve damage. Now, to be totally objective here, the source material notes these complications are exceedingly rare. We're talking roughly 1 in 100,000 patients. But they are significantly more dangerous for elderly patients, particularly those with existing kidney failure. If those kidneys can't flush the drug out quickly enough, the toxicity just relentlessly builds up in the body. I really want to emphasize that first risk, drug-induced liver injury, or DILI. Chronic prophylactic use of nitrofurantoin can literally lead to chronic active hepatitis or even full-blown cirrhosis of the liver. This isn't just an upset stomach, it can be life-threatening. This specific severe risk is exactly why nitrofurantoin was slapped onto the Beers criteria list. That's a heavily monitored list of medications that should be prescribed with extreme caution or just completely avoided in older adults. It's a wildly powerful weapon, but man, it demands immense respect. So how do we harness this incredible, super bug-killing power while dodging those toxic risks? Let's move to our final section, future antibiotic boosters, featuring nanoparticles and plant extracts. Researchers right now are experimenting with combining nitrofurantoin with cutting-edge science and, interestingly enough, ancient nature. Studies are actively testing combinations of the drug with silver nanoparticles, AGNPs, as well as natural plant extracts like essential oils from cypress trees. When you combine them, you get this amazing synergistic effect. The nanoparticles basically punch holes in the bacterial cell walls, allowing the nitrofurantoin to flood in even faster. What you should take away from this is that by using these boosters, doctors could potentially prescribe much lower, safer doses of the antibiotic, while actually maximizing its killing power. That heavily reduces the risk of liver or lung toxicity. It's a total game changer.
Which brings us to a final thought I want to leave you with today. As we stare down this terrifying future of drug-resistant superbugs, we constantly look to the horizon, waiting for some brand new miracle cure to save us. But as nitrofurantoin proves, sometimes the weapons we need were already forged decades ago. It requires incredibly careful management, and for sure, it carries real risks. But it forces us to ask, is the key to fighting future superbugs hiding right there in our medical past? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time as we continue to visualize and decode the science shaping our world.